Good morning from Steve Trueblue in Sydney. I've got an important message for people who it would seem, there's a golden opportunity that's been missed to roll back cultural Marxism in a very mighty way. And it simply goes down to occupational health and safety regulations, which we're all familiar with in work areas. You're not allowed to do work practices or work attitudes or work habits that lead to incidents and accidents that can reduce company productivity, because it costs insurance companies a damn fortune. We're all very familiar with the political correctness of workplace safety, which can drive you mad sometimes. So we were not allowed in my phone company to use aluminium ladders because you might be electrocuted, that sort of thing. If you ever hit the fluorescent light, it drove us crazy sometimes. But the intention of all the workplace safety regulations was absolutely wonderful and beyond praise. And that is to keep a company working as viably as possible. And the basic rule, I would say, of occupational health and safety is do no harm. Okay? Do no harm. Now here's how we can roll back cultural Marxism. Schools are introducing, I'm led to believe from a video I just saw the other day from Britain, that around the Western world, 5-year-old kids are being introduced to gender fluidity and transgender thinking. It's part of the LGBT thing, right? Transgender. So whether you like it or not, it's already been certified. Whether you agree with this or not, whether it should be or shouldn't be, it's happened. That is, transgenderism has been certified as totally ineffective and useless pseudoscience by Johns Hopkins University. So there it is in plain writing. Now, what's the other aspect of it? Well, basically, it's a suicide cult. I want you to think about that. Transgenderism and gender fluidity is a suicide cult being introduced into work areas called schools. And I'm thinking that some conservative groups could actually take on education departments around the world, suing them for breach of occupational health and safety. I think this is vitally important, and I think it's something that we're all missing because we all live such information overloaded lives. We often tend to be stunned into a sort of sleepwalking. Happens to millions and millions of people, and it's not on. We can't allow this opportunity to get past us. Disappointingly, it seems to me that about the only people who really care about this seem to be Christian groups. Small in number these modern times, and I'm deeply disappointed that average sort of secular-minded people aren't getting on the bandwagon to sue their respective education departments. A school principal on the television said there were numerous safeguards against pedophilia in schools that were not obvious to laymen. She went on to explain, one of the rules is they're not allowed to visit students in their homes. Another one is they're not allowed to close the office door when they have a student in their school office, you see. This is for protection against pedophilia and molestation and too firm personal relationships developing with students and teachers, you see. So I'm sure you've all seen stuff about that in the newspapers. In light of these safeguards against excessive closeness of relationships between parents and teachers and students and teachers, I want to ask this question, and this is serious. And it goes like this: how in hell, if you're going to be that careful to guard against pedophilia, guarding the welfare of all your students, how can you introduce to them into the work area, into the living space, transgenderism and gender fluidity, which is essentially a suicide cult? It's got to be challenged by people who care. And I'm looking to conservative Christian groups. Johns Hopkins University has done extensive studies, some of them lasting 30 years, to reveal that the suicide rate of transgender people is 2,000% elevated. Now, that's a massive body count and totally unacceptable. And how you can introduce to students the thin end of the wedge of transgenderism with gender fluidity, because it was revealed in that little video clip I saw the other day, which is, I'll link it below the video, that basically first day at school, little Johnny's asked, do you want to be a boy or a girl? And what would you like to be on Wednesday? We can help you plan your life, young Johnny. You can be a girlie on Friday and maybe something other than a girl, maybe a lumberjack or something, I don't know, dressed in women's tights or something. Be anything you like on Monday. But we're actually doing damage. We are prepping these children, schools are doing this damage, prepping children to join a suicide cult. And that's what transgenderism really is. It's been utterly exposed by the publications of the Johns Hopkins Medical School, who have actually stopped doing transgender surgery because they put out an official edict saying that it's a mental illness, is gender dysphoria, it's rare, and there's no physical surgery that fixes it. I will also add there's no medicines that fix it either. There's not one medicine for one single mental illness. Did you know that? Never been invented by Big Pharma. So there's no medicine and no physical operations can deal with the case of gender dysphoria. To further weaken the mix, there's the known knowledge now that a lot of people think they're gender dysphoric are actually suffering mild autism, something like Asperger, which is functioning autism. They suffer confusion for intellectual reasons, nothing to do with gender. It's just that they fall into the trap of sitting in front of Marxist trained young school teachers. So I don't know how to really contact Christian groups. I'm hoping someone else could run with this video. Just take the suggestion, flick it round the net to a few groups and bounce it off a few Christian people and say, here seems to be a golden opportunity to roll back a Marxism, cultural Marxism in a mighty way and have them leave our children alone. Gender fluidity is the thin end of the wedge where you are sort of initiated into concepts of gender variability, and that sets you up to join the suicide cult called transgenderism, which surely must violate all the rules of occupational health and safety and looking after the students to ensure they come out of school alive. It must be a violent breach of the health and safety regulations put upon teachers by education departments around the world. And I think a court case has got to be launched somewhere. It might take a single court case, drags on for years or something, but that will get the ball rolling. Then precedents will be set. And it'll be a way to stop Marxist school teachers from universities basically getting young children to, without realising, sign up for transgender suicide pact, really. That's what it really is. Now, the other thing I'd like to know is, when you talk to the 5-year-olds and you say, look, you can be a boy or a girl, we can organise the operation for you. We'll fill in the forms for you because we know you can't even write yet, but we'll fill in the forms and get the ball rolling. And you can have the operation, put you on medications, hormone blockers and all that stuff. Do they say to the child, oh, there's a 2,000% boost in your likelihood of suicide? Do you want to introduce that into your family, your own suicide? It's got to be opposed violently and firmly by Christian groups who care, I think. And I can't think of any other groups that might do this. I'm thinking very hard about this. I'm hoping someone can see this video and put the suggestion in a few different places. Just a further addition after millions of years of evolution, that's if you believe in evolution. I'm only using it as a metaphor. I don't accept it. I'm using it as a metaphor that we're all familiar with. After millions of years of evolution, suddenly humans in the 21st century require political intervention to enable them to grow up. I don't know why suddenly that's really a viable proposition. It should be utterly rejected. That's another angle by which you could attack this Marxist indoctrination in schools into the suicide cult called gender fluidity and transgenderism. That's how I see LGBT. And I think we're familiar with the additional suicides of homosexuals. So I don't know why they're allowed to even enable or teach homosexuality as a viable lifestyle where they're supposedly concerned with the well-being and survival of the students, when all of these things reduce the survivability of the students if you want to think in a kind of evolutionary way. So that's another angle that can be argued with a whole lot of people. I think it's a very good way to go at the cultural Marxists. So I will further add that Marxism, which utterly possesses gullible young people leaving university to become teachers of our precious little people, so utterly possessed, they don't seem to realise that they are basically signing up to destroy everything. Marxism is civilisational suicide. They admit it. Everything has to be destroyed so they can introduce amongst the smoking ruins some kind of Mad Max dystopia. They call it utopia or something. They have no plan for what it's going to be, but when everything's destroyed, civilization is ended. So they want to take us back to pre-medieval times, as far as I can tell. So there's a lot of things wrong with Marxism. It's socially and physically destructive to the lives of people, as well as being a terribly destructive influence on civilization itself. And its worst influence, its nexus point, seems to be universities that produce the teachers. Who just want to destroy everything themselves while they have a tenure with a comfortable lifetime job teaching people how to destroy society. And Marxism has never promised anything else but destruction of everything. You can read Karl Marx yourself. So on health and safety regulations alone, it would seem you could completely oust Marxism from schools. It would seem to be another bit of leverage that could be used in a court case. Where's the evidence that Marxism produces anything useful? There just isn't any, is there? And what's an interim fix for keeping gullible young brainwashed school teachers who are really just have no life experience? How do you keep them away from teaching in schools? Well, you have a minimum age to teach small children, 30. So they've got to get a real life experience job, live somewhere else outside the school system. Between leaving school, finishing university, there's got to be a 7-year respite where you must learn to live a normal life first. And that should shake a lot of Marxism out of you. So limiting the age of school teachers would seem to be an easy way of dealing with the professors who keep turning out generations of Marxist suicide cult school teachers. They must be denied access to our young people till they have grown up themselves. Okay? So about a 7 or 8 year gap in their careers. I'm sorry if it upsets the school system, but there's too much damage taking place to our young people today. I'll also add that transgender, the suicide cult thing, although it's been stopped by Johns Hopkins universities, it still goes on around the world. It's a money-making enterprise and a big thrill by Marxists promoting it. So there's school teachers building their lives around it. All these LGBT campaigners build careers out of basically boosting the suicide rate of Western civilization in a major way. It's important we learn to think about this stuff in these sorts of terms. In finishing, I'll just say, to remind you of the theme of this video, that it's about time some conservative, caring people stood up and challenged the education system and forced them to remove cultural Marxism from primary schools and high schools, because it violates health and occupational safety guidelines in schools and work areas. It literally raises the body count, the death rate of its young students to an unacceptable level, 2,000%, certified by the Johns Hopkins University Medical School. So that's a pretty powerful thing to hit any cultural Marxist with and say, it's indefensible what you're doing. It really is. So can I leave it to some conservative group who's got a group of people who can raise money and get sympathetic lawyers, that sort of thing. This is a good way to roll back Marxism in a very, very mighty way. Steve here in Sydney, over and out.